Good evening. The January 10th, 2017 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors is hereby called to order. Will you please stand and join me for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome back, everyone, and happy 2017. It's very exciting to get back into the business of public education. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Andrews? Present. Director Lassane?
Present.
Present.
Present. President Weston?
Present. All right. We're now at section 4.0, the adoption of the agenda. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Combe, will you please introduce the agenda?
Yes, consistent with the plans established at your 2016 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment for routine business, a recognition item this evening, a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for information items, a segment for unfinished business, and one for new business, a segment for upcoming agenda items, and then one for board comments. Since publishing the agenda, several items, unfortunately, have been updated. Item 7.3, approval of vouchers, was corrected to actually include the vouchers, which we uploaded after publishing the meeting to you. Item 7.4, approval of minutes of the December 6th regular meeting, was corrected because a date within the minutes was incorrect. Item 8.1, the superintendent's report, will be updated during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 12.1, approval of 2017 legislative priorities was updated to include a revised bill format and clean version of the legislative priorities because we needed to add something on advice of counsel. Item 13.2, policy 3410, student health, was corrected to fix a broken or incorrect link. And it delights me to say in all other respects the agenda is as it was originally published to you. Directors may change the order of business by a majority vote of the members.
Thank you, Dr. Combe. Is there a motion to accept the amended version of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Mason to accept the amendments to the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The amendments carry. Now, do I need to move them?
No. You're actually approving the agenda as corrected.
As corrected.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I stand corrected.
That's okay.
No,
We'll just make it so in the minutes.
We're going to make this
Yeah.
work. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're at a very exciting time. That's the recognition, and we have a very special recognition for this evening. And Dr. Stewart, are you prepared to present this?
Good evening, Happy New Year, and I'd like to invite Principal Monique Bean and Assistant Principal Brent Radcliffe to join me at the lectern, please. And if we had more room up here, I'd invite all those Garfield Tigers back there too. So anyway, so I have many parts of my job that I enjoy every single day, but one that I really enjoy is having the opportunity every single day to recognize a student or a staff member or principal, which I guess you're staff member too, custodians. So tonight I want to have all of you join me in celebrating and recognizing Garfield staff, students, and families because they are the recipients of the National Title I Achievement Award in the area of English Language Arts. So when thinking about how am I going to highlight the work at Garfield, I started thinking about conversations I've been hearing since the Seahawks won on Saturday. And I especially have been thinking about conversations people have about Pete Carroll. I heard it this morning in a presentation too, and his famous quotes that he has. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to try to connect Pete Carroll's famous quotes to the work at Garfield. So here I go. So Pete says, "Practice matters. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. The staff at Garfield repeatedly looks at each individual student's reading data, and it is a habit of each staff member to act on student data. This is a best practice at Garfield. Pete says, I think the more you can engage the people that you're dealing with and involve them in the process, you have a better chance of drawing in the best sides that they can offer. And at Garfield, staff members consistently draw out the best in students by engaging students' parents in the reading process. This is a best practice at Garfield, and Pete would like that. Pete says, I remember thinking that's what it means to be successful, showing you can maintain success over a long period of time. What makes National Title I Distinguished School Stories especially powerful are the documented student achievement gains in consecutive years. That's one of the reasons they are getting this award. Like Pete said, it's about maintaining success, and Garfield Elementary has maintained success over the last several years. I think you probably remember we just gave them an award. We had Tigers here about 2 months ago. Pete says, it's what we're all about. We're trying to maximize every day. At Garfield, reading is what that school is all about. Staff members maximize reading potential by matching each student with a book that might spark their interest in reading. And Pete says, our program is built around being great in every moment, because all the little moments eventually add up to big events down the line. And that is the real reason why we are celebrating tonight. Garfield's approach is about being great in every moment for each student, because all the little moments for students add up to big events, big opportunities, celebration, and happiness in life. I could connect many of Pete Carroll's other quotes, and if you want to know what they are, all you have to do is Google Pete Carroll's quotes, to Garfield's awards, but I'm going to give you that assignment tonight because there are so many other reasons that we're celebrating tonight. But before I congratulate Ms. Bean and the staff, I want to congratulate Dr. Cynthia Jones. I don't know if she's here. There she is, way in the back, of course, because she's such a humble leader. But I want to say thank you to Dr. Jones, because she's the person who's really responsible for filling out the application and doing all the work behind the scenes. So Dr. Jones, I wanted to say thank you. And now I'd just like to congratulate Principal Bean, Vice Principal Mr. Radcliffe, and all the students, their parents, the staff at Garfield Elementary for receiving this award. And I hope to see you again back here in a couple months. So with that, Principal Bean, do you have anything else to say?
I just want to take the opportunity to thank the board so much for this recognition, for the district for their continual support of our school, and especially for our staff that roll up their sleeves every day and do this great work. So thank you.
So now I want to invite all
You rushed off so quickly. We'd love to get photo ops, right, Joyce?
Yes, we do. All the staff
Absolutely.
who care for the hearts of our kids to come up here.
Come on down.
Maybe we want a photo op, and we have a certificate for you.
Carol. We're back at it.
Thank you for coming.
Certificate of recognition awarded to Garfield Elementary School, and congratulations, Principal Bean, for earning a 2016-17 National Title I Part A Academic Achievement Award from OSBI for the ongoing dedication and support for students. Congratulations.
We're going to try this. I'm going to be the leading host.
Oh, you know what? We're still, if we can get a little tighter. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Big smiles. And one more. Thank you.
I do.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, yes.
But sit on your seat. I'm like, I'm in a first seat. You're gonna have to invest in a wide-angle lens and all these schools complaining on the boards.
It should be the least of our problems.
Yes.
Or the greatest of our problems. Yeah.
Yes.
So for whatever it's worth, Garfield has been doing this kind of work for some time, and the growth and progression of their excellence is not one of those flash-in-the-pan kinds of things. They've been working on this. Garfield actually was the place where I learned about the CAST process when I first came to the district, and the work that they've been doing and the outcomes they've been achieving with kids of poverty is remarkable. So much so, in fact, that it was certainly the place where I brought at least one admiral, if not an admiral and a lieutenant general, and it's the reason that I suggested that this Friday be the spot where the governor starts his statewide education tour, because of the remarkable work that they've done, helping kids overcome barriers, and I'm very proud of them.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And it's great to see that school spirit. All right, we're now at section 6.0 of the public comments. The school board specifically sets aside 2 times during our regular board meetings to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value your public input and want to understand the perspectives you bring to the table. Dr. Cohn, do we have any?
We have no requests for public comment this evening, but I would note that we have, I think, I can't actually see over the lectern, but I think we have 1 or 2 scouts in the audience this evening.
Yeah. You know, if we could have our scouts come forward, and if you could just introduce yourself and say what school you're at and maybe what you did over winter break.
I am Kai Barrett, and I go to North Middle School, and I went to Garfield.
And what did you do over your winter break?
Well, at the beginning of it, I got to go snowshoeing, which was really fun. So.
Good for you.
My name is Kelvin Jenkins, and I go to Woodby Island Waldorf School. And for winter break, I went snowboarding at the beginning.
I am Wolfgang Bauer. I go to Whittier Elementary, and over winter break, well, I couldn't go anywhere for winter break because I was sick most of the time, but...
I'm sorry to hear that, Wolfgang.
So we're delighted that Wolfgang spent his winter break getting better.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm Clorin Jenkins, and I go to Woodby Island Waldorf School, and over winter break, I went to La Push Resort with my brother Kelvin.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the school board meeting tonight. I understand this is probably part of a merit badge, so we appreciate you being here, and we'll try to make it as interesting as we can.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
All right, we are now at section 7.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please provide an introduction for the consent agenda?
Certainly. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers most of the time, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting, when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business. We renumber the remaining items, and the board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. Consent agendas are not subject to discussion or debate. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received 1 inquiry from a director about the nature of a particular position, the family specialist in the personnel report, and we provided an answer to all directors. Therefore, our consent agenda is presented as published, and we ask your approval thereof.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cohn. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of our agenda this evening? Then I will ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? It has been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you. We're now at section 8.0, the superintendent's report. Dr. Cohn, we look forward to your report.
As do I. Let's see if it will come up on the screen. Maybe one of the screens or 2 of the screens. We'll see. Here we go. I've got several items this evening. Well, actually, I just have a few items this evening, but a couple of them are fairly deep. Tonight, we're going to take just a moment on agenda highlights and some good news and updates, and then a little look ahead. Every year, this is a picture of a community member, Raj Haraharan. Every year, she leads the Kinder Connection Kindred Hearts community drive that collects donations, including food and coats and school supplies and gift cards to help homeless students at Madison Elementary School. Raj was really surprised by the number of homeless students in our district, and she expanded her efforts by taking to social media. As a result, she and folks who helped her were able to support students at Madison and Lowell and Woodside Elementary Schools. This evening, you got to meet a lot of staff from Garfield Elementary, and we'll, of course, be doing a little bit more recognition for them. I think at least a waffle breakfast, maybe a waffle breakfast with some eggs this time, because they've received so many wonderful awards. And then, of course, as I mentioned, they'll be getting an executive visit on Friday. Tonight, you're going to be provided an update on our work to implement the new social studies instructional materials for middle and high school students. You adopted those in May 2015. Materials have been provided to support teachers to engage students in becoming proficient in our state social studies standards and the Common Core standards for literacy in history and social studies. And we've emphasized 21st century skills significantly in a lot of this work. Tonight, we also are celebrating the 100th birthday of a former staff member of the district. Her picture is on the screen. Her name is Christine Dorsey, and she is a former teacher who spent virtually all of her career in elementary schools. She also served as a principal for what my notes say a year or 2 in Everett Public Schools. She was hired in September 1943. Which I don't think many of us remember. And she retired in June 1979. Her most recent, or let's say final teaching assignment was at Whittier Elementary. Larry O'Donnell brought Christine and her birthday to our attention. We invited her to be with us this evening. She declined the hubbub and all of that sort of thing, and I know you're all disappointed because that means no cake tonight. But Larry wanted you to know he appreciates our recognizing her. He had the privilege of working with her when she was the Whittier principal some 40 years ago. He shares that she was the kind of a master teacher you love to have on a staff. She was dedicated, dependable, very child-oriented. She was a favorite of kids, parents, and colleagues, and she still keeps in touch with individuals she had in class 70-plus years ago. So we all want to wish Christine Dorsey a happy 100th birthday. Happy birthday, Christine. All right, a little bit more good news. Hawthorne dedicated its new playground structure over break or close to the break. We had $76,000 donated by a variety of donors. The district funded the rest of the project. Ted you were there to help with this, and I think we have evidence of that. We call it an artifact, actually. And we're delighted that, Pam, okay, all right. And then I always worry that I'm forgetting that somebody was there when I'm supposed to remember. We really had a very nice ceremony. There were a lot of people. And what was really nice was a lot of people came out and stayed for a long time, despite the fact that it was bitter cold and the wind was blowing and then it started raining and all that sort of thing. So we actually are in misery in this picture, but we're not letting you know that. So we're delighted and thankful for the Howarth Trust, our friends at Snohomish County who contributed some capital funds to this, Schaefer Crane, a lot of private donors in our Everett Public Schools Foundation, which helped and coordinated a lot of that fundraising effort. That, by the way, based on your policy statement, is the last playground structure for which PTAs and community members will be raising funds, because you've integrated that after 125 years into the district's capital program. We hosted, we're the site for a legislative breakfast put on by the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County. We're delighted to have a lot of legislators and community leaders here on the 5th for what was billed as a breakfast meeting. It was kind of a stand up and grab a donut on the way in kind of a thing. It was very nice. We had a lot of folks here talking about priorities that are very, very important to the district. And I was able to welcome folks and show them a little visual on how closely the county's priorities are aligned with respect to education with the district's priorities, and was able also to show them the Economic Alliance's letter of support for the $12 million capital request for the Allied Health and Medical Pathways project at Everett High School. So this was I think the second year, because I think you welcomed folks the prior year, and we're delighted we're able to host this, and that we're delighted that this is just an example of the 50,000 or so people who visit this building in the course of a year based on the last count that I received from our facilities folks. Maintenance was very busy over the break, as you might well imagine, and I'm going to take a little bit of my 3 minutes and 50 seconds remaining for this. The maintenance folks have a lot of projects to complete while staff and student are away on break. A number of the projects that they do during break, they're just too hard to do and too disruptive when students are using our facilities. Several examples of work: replacing restroom floor at Silver Lake Elementary, entry flooring and staff restrooms at the athletics building. Original flooring is a bit old, and you get to the point where you've got to replace that. We secured the 124th Street property and began the process that we asked you to approve this evening to declare surplus the buildings that came with the property that we need. We do not need the buildings, so we'll be demolishing those as quickly as we can so they don't become nuisances. There are ongoing heating and ventilation repairs at Sequoia High School. And we added a special education Achieve classroom at Hawthorne, so there's some renovation work to do that. I think that's the picture that's on the screen. Isn't that what they're doing? Getting the Hawthorne facility ready? I think that's what it is. And then it says carpenters and painters work during the break to minimize disruption. That's carpenters and painters, yes. So the first day back after break is also a busy time, and as you might imagine, with the cold snap that we've had, folks are very busy making sure that nothing froze and that the buildings are warm enough and that enough of the sand and de-icer gets spread, and we really appreciate the work that all those folks do to help with that. I actually could go on with a longer list, but Mike will do that at a future capital update. I just want to say we're very fortunate to have a very hardworking and dedicated crew in our maintenance team and our custodial team, and we very much appreciate all the work that they do to keep schools safe, open, and warm for our kids and our staff. Quick look at what's ahead. You begin with us State of School reviews on the 12th of January, and we're very excited for you to participate in those reviews. Actually, I think all of us who participate in those are very excited. They're a truly wonderful opportunity to see what's happening in schools and why we're doing some of the things that we're doing. You have a special board meeting on the 17th of January. 4 of the 5 of you are attending the Mayor's State of Everett address on the 18th of January, so we published that as a special meeting to make sure that you could talk about whatever you like to if you gather together while you're there. There's a regular board meeting on the 24th of January. We'll be recognizing a number of folks, including the school board that evening. We've got another regular board meeting on the 7th of February. It's the only one that month, so it'll probably be a little bit longer than if it were not the only one, just kind of a fair warning, heads up. And then your legislative conference is February 12 and 13. As far as I know, everybody's going, and both of our student reps are going, and we also have, as far as I know, all 4 ASB leaders from our high schools going. That is the superintendent's report, the first for 2017. I will look it up on my calendar and give it to you. I think it's 7:30, but I'll look it up on my calendar. No, it's just the state of this city is in the morning. It's a breakfast activity, and I believe it's at Xfinity. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn.
You are welcome.
We're now at Section 9.0, Strategic Monitoring Report, and we're going to have a Social Studies Instructional Materials Implementation Update. And if folks recall, this was originally slated for later on in the year, but we want to get an update sooner rather than later to see how this is going. So, Georgia, we're excited to hear your report.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you a report on our social studies implementation plan. And the purpose tonight is to review the goals and focus of our implementation plan, report on progress toward implementing that plan, and then share our next steps. The work we're doing with our social studies program and our implementation of the high quality new instructional materials we have ties directly to helping us achieve our district vision and mission, really helping us with having our students acquire the knowledge, attitudes, and skills to adapt to the emerging needs of a changing world. These materials and our social studies program really tie directly to achieving those things. The work we're doing in our implementation plan also ties directly to our strategic priorities of serving our students and creating equitable access to common content and outcomes for like courses across the district, and rigorous and engaging opportunities for students in their courses. In all this work, one of our other major goals is to align all of our work with the Washington State Social Studies Learning Standards, our Common Core state standards for history and social studies, and 21st century skills. Another important goal is to focus on best practices to ensure that our students are prepared for real-world challenges and success in their future, in college, career, and civic life. And then, most importantly, at the bottom, is to support the effective use of these high-quality materials that we've had the privilege to be able to adopt. As we look to this year, our implementation focus is on our standards and integrating those 21st century skills for deeper learning opportunities for our students, and a focus on what we consider best practice in social studies, and that is an inquiry approach to learning focused on problem and project-based learning. Also, really important, developing instructional maps for our courses and other curriculum portal resources to support teachers as they utilize our new materials, and working to be sure teachers feel really competent and effective in their use of all of the resources that they have at their disposal now and that students have. And then, as often as possible, providing teachers with opportunities to reflect on and link to the professional growth and evaluation system to see where these practices and standards-based work fit in with the work we're doing for professional growth and evaluation. The larger setting here for social studies is provided with these quotations from the National Council for the Social Studies. The social studies is really an important part of students' experiences in their K-12 schooling, because social studies is more than simply acquiring content. It's also about the experiences students have in the class and their opportunities to engage in critical thinking and reasoning and addressing real-world problems, wrestling with real-world questions and issues, and really enabling students to engage in civic discourse, problem solving, and taking informed action. This is highlighted also by the state standards that we have, because our standards fall into two main areas. One has to do with the disciplines themselves. We have 4 social science disciplines that we're supporting students to learn in terms of concepts, ways of thinking, kinds of data, and those kinds of things that are specific to disciplinary work. On the other hand, we also have social studies skills called out explicitly in our state standards, calling for students to learn critical reasoning, engage in inquiry-based research, deliberate public issues, and create products that support a position or thesis, and then present those products to meaningful audiences. In addition, that side of the standards column of skills is also includes the reading, writing, listening, and speaking Common Core standards. These standards that go across the curriculum for CTE, science, social studies, English, are preparing our students for success in college and career. And the ones that are called out in reading and writing are specific, there are specific ones for social studies. So what kind of a process and best practice is called for in these standards and by what the National Organization of Social Studies Educators asks for, and that is this inquiry process for students that has these main components where students connect and investigate really important and complex questions, applying disciplinary tools and concepts. This is why we're calling it disciplined inquiry, because we're using the concepts and inquiry approaches relevant to different disciplines like economics or geography. And that students analyze and evaluate sources and multiple points of view. And then they synthesize and demonstrate. They develop their claims and evidence with that research and the questions in mind, communicate and critique conclusions, and take informed action. This framework is highlighted in the College, Career, and Civic Life C3 Framework for Social Studies State Standards, which is the national gold standard outlining the approach to be taken in social studies that helps us truly realize the standards and what the standards call for in those classrooms. So what does that look like in our classrooms? The inquiry process where students are engaging in these challenging questions and doing the research and taking positions and all of those things may end up with a structured academic discourse by the end of it. So as a result of exploring all the resources and going through a process of research, students take positions, for example, in a civic discussion or Socratic seminar or philosophical chairs. And an example of a civic discussion might be this question: did the end of the Cold War make the world safer? Another way that students engage in the inquiry process is through research-focused projects, such as the state-required civics CBA or project-based learning. And an example of a project there, as you see, is writing an American Revolution blog with this essential question related to it. Other options are having students engage in document-based questions where they read multiple sources, take a position, use evidence from the sources to support their positions. And we have DBQ, the DBQ project is one of our supplemental resources, as well as DBQs embedded in the instructional materials we bought. And these DBQs were originally utilized in AP courses, but now, as they say, we're democratizing the DBQs and bringing them to all of our students beginning with 6th graders. And an example there would be a DBQ with the question, how revolutionary was the American Revolution? And here's another example of a project that would be implemented. And last spring, when we had the opportunity to do a little study session with you to introduce the materials, this is the one that was connected to some of the exploration we did then, where students would then develop collaboratively a Hall of Fame website for identifying who the top people were in the Renaissance and scientific revolution and provide documentation for their ideas about that. All of this work aligns directly with distinguished levels of teaching. As you see, the language here in this chart ties directly, as you see, as an example, Domain 3, that students are formulating questions, initiating inquiry, exploring important content, reflecting on their learning. All of those things are at the distinguished level of teaching. So the support we're providing to our teachers is supporting them as they drive toward these higher level and more distinguished levels of teaching. So where have we been and where are we going? So our implementation started following your approval in spring 2015 of the instructional materials for adoption. And in summer and fall, we began initial use, professional learning, and implementation of AP Human Geography and Sociology courses. And then over the course of the 2016 year, 15-16 year, we were able to start implementing materials for AP courses and providing instruction and professional learning and support, and the beginning of development of common AP course syllabi. And then in summer fall of 2016, we continued the initial use professional learning for AP World History courses. Moving on to summer and fall, we had initial use professional learning for all of our core social studies courses, with 100% of social studies teachers attending. During this time, they learned about our standards, they learned about effective use of our core instructional materials, and they began to wrestle with what inquiry means in the social studies classroom, and recognizing the importance of students questioning, creating, and communicating different perspectives using the 4 branches of social studies. The summer and fall also was an opportunity to launch our really powerful and phenomenal district social studies leadership team, who work together as supports for one another as a district professional learning community, but also go back and forth to support PLC development in their own buildings. In the work they do, they identify challenges and help each other problem solve around them. Here are some examples of some of the problems that they presented to one another and problem solved around. Then they also spend time sharing some of the successes, and you see here highlighted some of the key things that they're very excited about. For example, the Bounce Page app. If students don't have computers in the room, they still can hold their phone over their textbook, and it will launch videos and interactive charts and all kinds of other things. And also they really love the civic discussions, and they love so many of the digital resources. They're just really fans. Then they also spend time on deeper looking at inquiry and the implications for students and teachers. And they recognize that over time we'll be moving to empower students to be the ones initiating the questions and initiating the inquiries. And also that students will be learning to challenge each other's ideas and go deeper. And they see also that teachers will be really providing guidance and modeling question and inquiry, and supporting students not only with the compelling essential questions, but also what are considered these supporting questions that help them answer key questions relating to that larger inquiry. Also, one really powerful thing that our teachers have done is basically develop these instructional maps and begin this work of really integrating our resources to support our teachers in buildings as they go through their instructional plans for the year. This fall, we have provided support for middle school extended resource and achieve social studies teachers, provided one-to-one and team support in buildings, and also we've continued on with professional learning opportunities for all of our teachers. And we've had, first of all, a focus on digital platforms to ensure that all teachers really feel comfortable getting in and utilizing those digital resources and making sure students have opportunities to be online. Next steps that we have ahead of us are to provide professional development focused on the standards, best practices, and links to TPEP, and we're going to continue to offer grade-level, course-specific professional learning sessions, as well as one-on-one coaching and team support. And we're also going to be having our social studies leadership team back throughout this year to be continuing to problem solve and collaborate and integrate the resources. We're also going to be providing initial use professional learning for supplemental resources. Up to now, our main focus has been on the core instructional materials to be sure people are launched and feel really comfortable and capable with both the hard copy and digital resources. But over the course of the year, beginning in the winter, we're going to start moving toward supporting our teachers to get acquainted with and begin to utilize some of the supplemental resources we've adopted. One of those supplemental resources that we're going to be integrating into our instructional maps is, since time immemorial, the tribal sovereignty curriculum. And we are also planning this year to begin a partnership with the Tulalip tribes to implement the since time immemorial tribal sovereignty curriculum. I want to just spend a minute or two to just highlight particularly this supplemental resource. This was developed by OSPI, the Office of Native Education, in partnership with the 29 federally recognized Northwest tribes, public and tribal school teachers, university staff, state organizations, and tribal organizations. And the goal is to be sure that students have a deeper understanding of the history and culture of Pacific Northwest tribes. The materials that are provided include primary and secondary source materials. They are inquiry focused and standards aligned, and they culminate in CBAs, classroom-based assessments, project-based learning, and these really draw students into the experience and understanding of what is meant by concepts like tribal sovereignty and the idea of, since time immemorial, this idea of our Native peoples being here since time immemorial, and we have a different relationship with them compared to other groups that in our society, including a different legal relationship based on the Constitution. As required by the 2015 legislature's passage of Senate Bill 5433 that amended RCW 28A, these requirements relate to teaching the tribal history, culture, and government in K-12 common schools across the state. And the requirement is that as a district reviews and revises social studies and history curricula, we are expected to incorporate this curriculum into our adopted social studies curricula and also collaborate with federally recognized Indian tribes within or neighboring our district boundaries. And for us, that is the Tulalip tribes. So we're moving forward on that work this year, and we plan also to bring together some of our elementary teachers so that we can begin integration 3 through 5, grades 3 through 5 of the STI curriculum. And currently that's where the curriculum is. There are plans now to develop early learning and primary resources, but they're not yet available through the STI curriculum. But these are really phenomenal resources, and we've already given our teachers a little taste of what it's like in the training, the initial use training, having them explore a number of items and deciding whether they are rights or privileges, ranging from clean water to keeping treaties. But it was very powerful learning, and social studies teachers really know how to take different perspectives and get involved in discussions, so it was really great. So looking ahead, what will we be able to observe in our schools 5 years from now? We engaged our leadership team in considering this question. Where are we going together? Where do we want to be within 5 years? And some of the things they said were that we will definitely have a greater degree of academic rigor because students will be focused on critical thinking and inquiry activities as they engage in real-world problem-solving projects and really focus on 21st century research skills. The one-to-one technology ratio will provide more collaboration and deeper learning. And as student scores increase and students do more deeper thinking, distinguished levels of teaching will also increase. And those are directly the quotes and the excitement that we have from our leadership team as they drive forward to lead their PLCs in their buildings. So in summary, tonight we reviewed the goals and focus of our social studies instructional materials implementation plan, reported on progress toward implementing that plan, and shared next steps. And I'd like to invite your questions.
All right, thank you, Georgia, and thank you for that report. I know this was something that was really important to the board, that we want to hear this. So directors or student representatives, do we have any questions? Director Lassane.
Yes, I do want to thank you on your information you provided me this evening on Senate Bill 5433. I was approached at the WASDA conference by Senator McCoy, and he started asking me questions on that. So I plan on providing him an update now that we have that update, and I appreciate your effort in that. And not just that, I am very enlightened, I guess you would say, with everything that we're doing on the new social studies curriculum, and also tying it to TPEP. I think that's very good. It's all interconnected and linked together. And so, you know, what is a distinguished teacher? What would a distinguished teacher be providing and developing our students with? And I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much for providing that information this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I agree. That was it was excellent the way that you connected all the pieces together. My question is really just getting a little bit of history, not coming from a background of education. I heard you talk a lot about inquiry-based approach. How are the new materials different than, say, what would it look like 10 years ago in a social studies classroom? And sort of what is the trend there? And I understand how the new materials afford us more opportunities for digital connections and such, but in terms of the actual instruction, what are the changes? Where are we? You did a great job of talking about where we are and where we're going, but how is that different than where we've been?
So a standard model in secondary social studies in the past, I'm not saying currently, but in the past has been teacher presentation of key ideas, PowerPoint presentations, which I just did tonight, but PowerPoint presentations or other kinds of presentations with students taking notes, and the teacher being the one who is distributing the knowledge. Our teachers have been evolving over the years to go beyond that and to address the standards, to have students be the ones who are engaging in the research around the questions. And where we still will have teachers present, because it's still essential that students know how to take effective notes. during a lecture, we have to prepare them for that. They will be going to, when they go on to college, if that's their choice, they will have to be in lecture halls and know how to take how to take and make effective notes. But they also will have to know how to engage in research on their own. That's really called for at the university level now, from freshmen on up. And so they have to know how to ask those questions, how to use the lenses of the different disciplines, how to begin to really grow in their understanding of what those perspectives add to their inquiry about a particular issue, and then really be empowered around that. So that's kind of the bigger switch, is to have students be the workers in the classroom and be the ones really engaging in that inquiry, effectively guided by the teacher.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It was great, thank you so much.
Student representatives, any questions? Director Andrews?
I do have a question. I really like the social studies standards, the 3 C's, college, career, and civic life. It seems like civics education has maybe gained or should have greater importance or relevance in our society right now. So I was just curious, is civics, is it a separate course that is required by all seniors, or is it part of government? Can you just...
Yes, it is part of the government course at 12th grade, but the civics strand goes through all of the social studies courses, basically K-12. We have the civics content strand going through, highlighting our key constitutional ideals and principles and governmental systems, international relations, all of those kinds of things. So that's a strand that goes all the way through all courses and is a really essential and important lens on whatever area of study students are engaged in. And also, this is the one area also that, while we don't have questions on the SBA related to social studies, we do have state-required civics classroom-based assessments. And our students engage in those at 5th grade, 8th grade, and at 12th grade. And they're really focused on questions such as at 5th grade, the common good, taking a position on an issue, using research to take that position. So the state really values it, and we report each year on our students engaging in those CBAs.
And is that a fairly recent change?
We've been doing it for quite a few years.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact date that it came on as a requirement.
Director Andrews, were you?
I'm done, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I had just a quick question, maybe stepping back at a macro level, and I'm looking at slide 24 where, and you had said, you talked about year 1 professional learning sessions focus on materials, use digital platforms. Can you talk a little bit about digital platforms and what do the adoption tendencies look like? I hear that some people are excited. My guess is there are some people who might be a little intimidated.
Yes.
And you have everything in between. And the reason why I'm asking the question is in regards to, as we look at additional curriculum adoptions, what can we learn from how people are learning on digital platforms that then can be applied to future adoptions?
So when our Social Studies Adoption Committee focused in their evaluation of materials, they really called digital platforms and digital resources out so that when over time students would each have their own device, we could be fully digital. And so what our digital platforms allow us to do, for example, with the platform that we had an opportunity to share last spring, what it provides is a really like visual way to look at an inquiry. And so you can see how students connect with the key ideas and essential questions through video and all kinds of other resources. And then the different resources, the primary and secondary resources, are provided, some of which are interactive in terms of what students can look at and work with. And also more video is available. And as an example, the collaborative Hall of Fame website development. What our digital platforms provide are videos and resources related to 21st century skills. So if students are launching into doing a collaborative project, there are videos there with students talking about how they are structuring a project and assigning responsibilities and developing a project over time, how they collaboratively talk together and work together. So there's support online for the skills they need to employ. The primary sources are online for them to access. So it's just this fuller, richer experience for students that is far more interactive and compels engagement.
Yeah, I'm asking you to kind of give a broad brush overview of how people are accessing and adopting to the new digital age in this. And yeah, I was just curious to hear your perspectives on what that was like.
Well, now the social studies teachers are joining with others to fight in those buildings for those labs and carts. So because they're really seeing the power of this. And as that one slide showed, students really appreciate the e-text and the ability to highlight and do note-taking right there. And also, just as with Springboard materials, they can sort and use those notes. They can have the text read to them, and it's read by professional readers, so they can get a really good sense of the text if they're struggling readers or need that support. There are just so many dimensions that weren't available to us before we had this digital platform. And this isn't to say that we're restricted only to that, because as time goes on and really people have the ability to feel really comfortable online, that kind of thing, we also want to develop opportunities for students to engage in research beyond the primary and secondary sources within the materials, so that they're engaging beyond, and we create opportunities for them to have real audiences for their work.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. We appreciate the update.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. We're now at section 10.0, the information discussion, and we are going to hear from Ruth, our first quarter financial update.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about our quarterly financial update. So I will summarize the first quarter district operations as part of our quarterly financial review and in support of our district's long-term financial planning. I'll provide an overview of 5 funds, including more in-depth information on the general fund. As you know, for general fund, a major driver of state revenues is student enrollment. Our annual average FTE is expected to be slightly higher than budget. And like the prior years, part of the difference from year to year is due to transitioning to full-day kindergarten. We've talked about that difference. Some of the headcount doesn't necessarily, or the FT doesn't necessarily translate to new headcount. So that's why you'll see a larger FTE increase over the past 3 years. But this is the final year we'll have that because we have transitioned all of our elementaries over to full-day kindergarten. Total projected revenues and transfers are approximated at $246.9 million. And our November, they're currently following a typical pattern for the year. Our November includes $1.37 million in transfers from capital projects to general fund for capital eligible maintenance and software expenditures. Expenditures are projected at $247.4 million, which is within our board authorized appropriations. The projections reflect and include our spring K-3 literacy curriculum adoption and the guest teacher rate increase that we recently discussed. Projected ending fund balance is $19.8 million, which is about 8% of expenditures. This is within or over the 5% target that's in board policy, and it helps to smooth the effects of the levy cliff that we are preparing for in the unlikely event that it happens. November ending fund balance is at about $29.7 million. And on to our other funds. Capital projects revenues are following a similar pattern to 2014-15. You'll notice that 2015-16 November went up, and that's because we had a property sale in that year. The bond sale will be, the current bond sale that we did in December will be reflected when you see the second quarter update. Total board authorized appropriations for capital projects fund was $39 million, and expenditures, as you would imagine, are not consistent from year to year due to the ebb and flow of multi-year project plans, etc. November ending fund balance for capital was $21.2 million, and that included the $1.3 million transfer to general fund. Debt service appropriations are $24 million, and our November ending fund balance was $20.5 million. We'll have a principal and interest payment in December that will be incorporated in the next quarterly update as well. ASB November ending fund balance was about $2 million, and finally transportation ending November fund balance was about $28,000, and that did go down from the beginning of the year due to buying 3 buses that were paid for in October. And that was quick, very quick. So I am happy to answer any questions and then elaborate or expand if you would like me to.
All right, thank you, Ruth. It's good to see the finances tracking as projected.
Yes.
Do we have any questions?
Yes. Going back to page 10, when we start looking at the revenues, can you explain to me or refresh my memory on 2015, the green line that was shifted, from September to December has such a wider curve there. What caused that? Yes.
In November, we had a property sale, and so we received some revenue in for a piece of property.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Andrews?
I have an accounting question, and it's probably not fair for me to pose it to you right now, but I'm going to do it because you probably know the answer. But if you don't, we can talk afterwards. When I was looking at the November financials, I noticed the transfer into the general fund of the $1.3 million.
Yes.
From in the other financing sources category, and I was kind of curious. It's like, oh, that exactly matches what we had budgeted. And then when I was looking at this presentation, it's explained that it's a transfer from the capital projects fund. My question is, when I look at the capital fund for the month, the total expenditures are $559,000, and I'm looking back at the statement in the consent agenda.
Yes, I'm tracking with you. Yes.
Okay. So is the rest of it included in the encumbrance column?
The rest of it is just below that. So you were looking at line B, total expenditures of $559,000. If you look just one below, there's a separate line for other financing uses. And that is where the transfer out goes. But in the case of transfers in, for some reason, they put it up in revenues on the general fund side.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why the state does that in their forms that we have to use, but there's your answer for
Okay, thank
for
you.
where
I
it is.
completely missed that line. Yeah, and I was just trying to make sense out of that. Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It shouldn't worry you when two CPAs start talking about
I
it.
know. I love it. That was a moment. That was
Boring,
beautiful.
right?
Any other questions for Ruth?
Ask me those kind of questions. Those are really easy.
It sounded easy. Absolutely. Well, thank you. We appreciate the
thank you.
report.
Appreciate it.
All right. All right. Thank you. We're now at section 11.0. We have come to the second time slot in our agenda for public comments. Dr. Kuhn, are there any comments?
There are no requests for comment this evening.
All right. Then we are scheduled for a break, or we can plow through. What are people's thoughts?
There's food sitting there.
Well, then we're going to have a break, darn it. Why don't we recess until 5:50? We are recessed. We're now at section 12.0 of the unfinished portion of our agenda, unfinished business, excuse me. And tonight we'd like to approve our 2017 legislative priorities. If you recall, we had brought these forward. I think Director Mitchell, you weren't here, and we wanted to get your voice. And we had some changes that we wanted to go through, and so some of those changes are reflected in the document you have before you. So, Mr. Moore, walk us through.
Thank you very much. Well stated. If you recall at our last meeting, we had a focus here in the first two paragraphs. There were a couple of things that were brought to our attention. One was that under the bill form, there was a bullet that said achieve 100% statewide graduation rate within the definition of basic education. And we felt that that was, you felt that that was not really clear. We also talked about really supporting the reality that the state needs to address and have a sustainable funding source for basic education. So the takeaway was let's combine the 100% graduation rate into the above item into another bullet, which is the third bullet here, and then let's bring forward a statement that we're supporting paramount duty at a regular, dependable state funding, i.e. a new revenue source to support public education. From that meeting, a draft was put together, and I met with the legislative representative, Director Mitchell, and she made some additions and really suggested that we move the revenue source higher on the list because the sequence now makes some sense. It's fund it, get a revenue source to do so, and then define basic education so all students can be successful, not just those who have an opportunity. We also looked, Director Mitchell and I, at the second paragraph, and we revised, and I guess I didn't see that in bill form, but we revised the title because it used to talk about compensation, and being as we moved compensation up, the second section really focuses on levy, and there was a minor adjustment in the section in the second sentence that had greater clarity. And from that, we had the opportunity to meet with Directors Mason and Lassane at the agenda review, and I think one word was tweaked at that point. And following that meeting, Dr. Cohn and I and colleagues met with an attorney regarding our efforts and initiative to get some funding for our high school campus, and she thought it was apropos that we would add that to our agenda as well. So if we were to pan down to the bottom, there's a fourth bullet added under the Capital Projects Fund. And I met with Director Mitchell today during our Rotary lunch, and she concurred with it. So I think due diligence has been performed, and it's there for your consideration and approval.
All right. Exhaustive. Very, very nice. So we have a bit of a rewrite in front of us, and I guess it is time for some discussion on our legislative platform. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. The second bullet point, increase revenue to fully comply, that was lifted out of the WASA language?
It's a blend between the two. You were kind of going back and forth. I think the WASA was very a one-sentence short statement, and the WASDA was a one-sentence short statement, and the WASA was more lengthy. And so it was kind of combining the two to provide a greater clarity, but not be so wordy. And in fact, I think that's, that's enough said.
And originally the statement had ended, state service is essential to K-12 students. And then I suggested we add and their families, because I think in talking to some legislators last time, we need to make sure that they understand we can't take out of the social services, we can't take out of higher ed, we can't take out of, grandmother who's caring for children, that it really has to be everything that supports those kids. So that's why I suggested that we add and families.
Any questions or comments or observations for either Mr. Moore or Director Mitchell?
I have one comment about this. I don't know how many of you saw the WASDA news announcements today or had a chance to read the Seattle Times, but they had a very timely editorial today about funding of education, starting with preschool. Research shows that 2 years of preschool is good. They also, for what I believe is the first time that I recall, endorse a simple majority for construction bonds, which is phenomenal to have that big of a voice out there endorsing that. So I appreciate that we're talking about this tonight. At the same time, the Seattle Times talked about it, as well as legislature went into session yesterday. So, but thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Other observations? Seeing none, the recommended action is that the Board of Directors approves the 2017 legislative priorities. Is there a motion to accept this as read?
So move.
Or second?
Second.
Been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to accept the motion approval of the 2017 legislative priority. Are there any other discussions? Hearing none, then we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add is that now Leanna will make it pretty for us as we go down into the state. So.
We're now at section 13.0, new business. Mr. Fleckenstein, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. I was looking over there. His chair was empty. And we have a number of first readings that we want to go through tonight. So, Larry, the floor is yours.
Okay. Our first proposed policy and procedure revision are to 2410 graduation requirements. This is in preparation for the implementation of the 24 credit requirement for the class of 2021. And that is our current group of 8th grade students. Updates to this policy and its procedure are well timed in preparation for communications to parents and the community for next school year and to develop student 4-year plans for 8th graders transition to high school this spring. On pages 1 through 3 of this policy, revisions were made to include the 24 credit graduation requirements and identify credit alternatives that are later provided in detail in the attached procedure. Updates to this policy followed previous formatting for graduation requirements for prior graduating classes for sake of continuity.
Are there any questions on this policy 2410? Is this essentially what we approved and then we backed away from and then we're now approving?
Yeah, as you probably recall, the Senate Bill 6552 was passed in 2014. It did ask districts to implement the 24 credit requirement as early as 2019,
yes.
Class of 2019. You had passed a waiver, which was a part of that Senate bill provision for school districts to do so, and now that's come due here in for the class of 2021.
That's better get moving. Yes. All right. Under general consent, if there's no other comments or additions, we will move this forward to the consent agenda at our next regular board meeting. Section 13.02, Policy 3410, Student Health Proposed Revision.
Mm-hmm. This is based on a WASDA model policy and pursuant to Senate Bill 6245 that was passed in the summer of 2016. It now includes both distance and near vision screenings in the list of services districts are required to provide to students. The revisions in this procedure seek to clarify and update how we serve student health in our schools. You can see eliminated the requirement for scoliosis screening in schools and revisions to clarify who and what is involved in our vision screening processes in our district. And just so you're aware, these vision screening processes are already in place.
This is more a question. Does funding come with these types of revisions?
Not that I'm aware.
Yeah. Never.
I do know when I was when I was a parent at Penny Creek, parent volunteers helped with the hearing screenings. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing there is a lot of volunteerism that happens for some of these tests.
Yeah, our support services, nursing services, and audiologists, for example. This is specific to vision screening, but they have an annual schedule, go from school to school to complete the screenings.
I do have a question.
Yes, Director Lassane.
For so many years, scoliosis screening was always done in schools, and now it seems to be taking out of schools. Is there, I guess, a scientific reason why they feel that it's not necessary to do it in schools anymore?
I don't know the scientific reason behind it. Probably because the frequency of discovery maybe is identified earlier, taking kids to pediatricians, and by the time they get into the school system, maybe there's already concern that's been identified. So, according to the Senate bill, it was removed from law.
Did they provide any funding with that for that before?
Not that I'm aware.
No,
Even if you answer that question, yes, what you have to track is whether or not something else was subtracted, right, at the same time.
Of course, yes. All right, any other questions for Larry on policy 3410? And then we will move it to the consent agenda for next week. Policy 13.03, policy number 4207, regulation of firearms and dangerous weapons on school district property.
Mm-hmm. This is a new community relations policy concerning the regulation of dangerous weapons and firearms on school premises. This was considered to be an essential level update for July 2016 from WASDA. The proposed new policy mirrors our student conduct policy regarding dangerous weapons and firearms, but is specific to adults and identifies the exceptions to this policy as defined in state law. The policy drafted by WASDA merged student and adult expectations around dangerous weapons. To create clarity, we've removed the student portions of the model policy in this adult-focused community policy and left the student expectations to continue to live in our existing student conduct policies in the 3000s levels of policies. The language contained in this draft is taken directly from two state laws, RCW 28A 600-420 and RCW 941-280 regarding dangerous weapons on facilities and school premises and the related exceptions. Proposed revisions now make it clear the exceptions, expectations for adults on district property regarding a firearm or dangerous weapon. The revised policy for the board's consideration has been reviewed and revised by legal counsel prior to inclusion on today's cabinet meeting agenda on 2 separate occasions, in addition to cabinet and policy review council's input.
Have all of these activities happening on our schools? Firearm safety, air classes, martial arts classes. So this is just if they were to ever happen, we have a policy to.
The first 2, yes. The first 2 you had mentioned that are listed there as exceptions to the policy.
Yeah.
We, to my knowledge, have not granted community to do that on school grounds. The third, which is martial arts classes, is actually part of a course offering at Cascade High School.
Okay.
However, when we talk about the dangerous weapon aspect to it,
there's not nunchucks.
Not with their foam.
Okay.
So provisions have been made in place to make less dangerous the implementations.
Okay.
Of
so you can teach
martial
the
arts.
skill without having the.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Larry? Director Andrews?
I have a question. On sentence E or paragraph E, I'm just having trouble logicking through that because it says a firearm is allowed while picking up or dropping off a student, provided the firearm is not taken onto school district property. But if you're picking up or dropping off a student, aren't you going to be on school property?
Mm-hmm. The very next letter.
Paragraph, yeah.
Paragraph is specific to a vehicle, which I think is, Director Andrews, is what you're describing. The first, the one that precedes it, is about dropping off a student. Let's say you're walking your student to school.
Right.
That particular paragraph is to say, once you hit the school sidewalk, that's where you stop if you have a firearm on you. You cannot go onto district property. The second paragraph, the one that follows it, is specific to state law that you can have a weapon in your car and a firearm with a permit. However, what we worked really diligently here in the district to prepare this for you is to completely specify that you cannot remove the weapon from your car while on district property. You are by law allowed to have it in your car, but you cannot remove it from your car on district property. There's already current laws in place about brandishing a weapon in front of others, even if you have a right to carry permit.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be in your car and make some sort of a demonstrative act to display your firearm while on district property. There's already laws for that, to prohibit that. And Director Andrews, we struggled with that wording very specifically to be compliant with state law, but make clear these boundaries on school and district property.
Okay, I'm rereading it with that in mind.
Okay.
So just to clarify, if an adult came to a school, they had a firearm in their car, and they attended a meeting, they can leave it in their car in the parking lot?
That's state law, yep.
Secured, locked.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of dicey when you start having adults bring kids, and they're in the car with the firearm and some of those things.
Yeah. And so this was to get as specific as possible and still meet the law.
Because
but
we
make
can't,
clear.
because we can't prevent their action of having the firearm with the kid. What we're doing is preventing them from bringing that firearm and the kid onto our property.
Correct.
No, they can, though, in a car.
They can in the car. They can leave it in the car. We
As
can't.
you probably are aware, a private vehicle
Yeah.
is considered private property. It's not district property. As long as it remains in the vehicle, it's their property, on their property.
That's the distinction, and that's an important distinction.
I have one, just the semantics.
Yeah.
It may be semantics. It says the restriction above does not apply to. In the center of the paragraph, the restrictions above does not apply to A, persons engaged in military, law enforcement, or school district security activities. Many times we will have members of the drill team and ROTC have weapons on them. Those aren't security activities. And what we don't want to do is have someone say, well, wait a minute, they have weapons on the
Are you talking about the air rifles?
they're not air
There is a provision, I believe, in there, I don't have it in front of
They're
me,
not
on
air
ceremony, for
rifles.
military ceremony, which
Those
that
are
would
like,
be protected.
yeah, they are like for your color guard.
That's correct.
B.
And that's B, Director
B?
Lassane.
Authorized.
B as in boy.
Involved in school district
Demonstration?
authorized convention showing
Authorized
demonstration.
convention showing demonstrations. Okay.
So ROTC is covered for their demonstrations for their, essentially the parades, if you will.
Parades
right?
or color,
Our understanding
presentation
it's
of,
B. And then the air rifle competitions is C.
air right, authorized air gun,
Yeah,
authorized firearm or air gun competition.
my understanding is that the ROTC kids are not military, so they would not be covered under A.
They wouldn't be covered by it, and that's the question.
Yeah.
Semantics, and I just want to make sure that we don't invoke this policy, and then by its invocation, we have to say no more of something we're already doing.
Yeah, and we were very mindful in its crafting to consider all the activities that are already in place within the district and meet the law as written too.
Because the weapons that the ROTC carries are not air guns. They are true weapons. They just don't have certain parts to them.
Yeah, they typically remove the firing pin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Director Andrews.
How do we communicate this to our community? Especially the adults. Like I'm thinking somebody shows up at a basketball game and they're carrying a weapon or something. And I know it mentions having gun-free zone signs. But do we do more than just put this in a policy manual to let the community know that guns are not allowed?
Board reports, follow-ups from this meeting, always cites changes to policy and is distributed to the public. So that's one thing that immediately happens right after it is adopted by the board. We could work on greater dissemination of this new policy and procedure to the public, at request.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of sensitivity around weapons these days, with good reason. I know this gives us some muscle if we need it, but I just, I guess I'm thinking of when my kids went through school, I don't ever remember having some sort of communication about guns on school property, probably because it just didn't exist at that time, but I was just curious as to what we will do with this.
Yeah, communication will be key because it is very specific now. And I hope in a very positive way. The specificity promotes safety.
Lots of questions on this one.
It's an important one.
Well, and it would be interesting to have discipline data on this. What are to Director Andrews' point, the reality is this is heightened in the media, and there is sensitivity around it, probably much more than certainly when I was in school. And as you're asking your questions of Larry, I'm thinking, how broad or how narrow is this as an issue? And it'd be helpful to know that at some point. We want safe schools. We just passed a significant bond and levy package for safe schools, so it'd be interesting to see that type of data. So, any other questions? Student representatives? Comments? Well, then under general consent, we will move to the consent agenda item. So now we're at 13.04. This is policy 4340, public access to district records. This is a proposed revision.
Revisions to this policy and the related procedure were precipitated by WASDA model policy update in April 2015 to provide districts with more comprehensive, clear guidance regarding their legal obligations under RCW 4256, which is the Public Records Act. Key updates include the legal requirement for each district to identify a public records officer to serve as the point of contact for members of the public requesting documents, 2, inclusion of the public records officer training now required by law. And 3, centralization of processing to the public records officer for consistency and tracking purposes. The procedure also includes a list of exemptions by which the district is justified in withholding responsive documents. The revisions to the policy, as you can see, are quite minor. More of the actual updates were to the procedural aspect of how we process documents internally.
Do we have any questions on policy 4340, public access to district records? All right, hearing none, we will move it to consent agenda. We're now at section 13.05, policy 6106, allowable costs for federal programs, and this is a proposed new policy.
A new WASDA essential model policy update in December of 2015 in response to new federal regulations known as uniform guidance uniform guidance. In the Code of Federal Regulations, Title II, Subtitle A, Chapter 2, Part 200, Subpart E. I just want to do that for fun. Go find that. The new uniform guidance applies to new and continuation grants awarded on or after December 26, 2014. The intent of the new regulations, according to the Federal Department of Education, is to reduce administrative burden and improve outcomes for education department grantees. An allowable cost is one that complies with all legal requirements applicable to particular federal education programs. These legal requirements are found in statutes, regulations, guidance, and applications of approved grant awards. The new policy and procedure contain the criteria by which costs are determined to be allowable and can thus be charged to a federal grant. Per this new policy, the district will maintain a system of internal controls over federal expenditures to provide reasonable assurance that federal awards are expended only for allowable activities and that the costs of goods and services charged to the federal awards are allowable and in accordance with the above referenced cost principles. A point of interest is on page 2 and 3. It refers to what defines a direct and indirect cost, which is a key piece to this policy.
All right. Any questions for policy 6106?
Would this be the part that you were describing to the Boy Scouts about interest in?
Incredibly, yeah. Was allowable?
Or exciting. I can't
Exciting.
remember.
I think those were the words I used, absolutely. All right, then under consent, we will move to the consent agenda. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
We're now at section 13.06, and this is Schedule 1400S, the board annual regular meeting calendar. Dr. Cohn, you have 2 minutes.
I don't need them. This is the calendar that we provided for you for the year after next. In your Friday report, we received a reminder, a really appropriate one, that we had forgotten that we had decided to go to one meeting in February rather than 2, and we're working very hard to avoid the 3-day weekends and Valentine's Day. So we corrected that, and we think that this avoids all of your conferences and the other kinds of things that we try to avoid when we put your calendars together.
Questions on the calendar? Is that what you need? All right, thank you. We're now at section 14.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn, what are those items?
We have 2. 14.1 is a reminder of your special meeting on January 17. The focus for that, actually we have a dual focus. One is AP program performance. You may recall that we canceled the meeting, took a meeting off the calendar and combined because we thought we could do these inside of the date we set aside. One is AP program performance, so it's an update on what's happening with our advanced placement programs, the growth in the programs, what's happening with the student involvement, the elimination of enrollment disparities compared to the general population of students. And then the other part of it is more of a work session than a study session on strategic partnerships, how that's evolving in our work, and in particular gathering your thoughts about what's strategic and what's not when we're talking about the relationships that we're working on in the district that affect all schools versus individual schools or very, very individually program specific. Item 14.2 is a reminder of your January 24 regular meeting. You have a lot of second readings coming before you. Actually, they'll be in your consent agenda. And a very interesting and a little bit longer than 20 minutes NGSS readiness report. We spent a fair amount of time in cabinet this week working over the new generation science standards and their connections to the Common Core and the STEM integration work that we're doing. And I think you're going to be very pleased and feel very good about the update and the readiness that will be described for you. And to some degree, you'll be thoughtful about the amount of money it costs when standards change and we have to purchase materials and all that sort of thing. And you'll be to some degree a little bit concerned about the timing of all this and the timing of the levy cliff and all the kinds of things that we're dealing with the legislature. You're going to be requested to approve a resolution so that we can replace rather than just repair, if you will, parts of North Middle School. And it's always, as I recall, Mike, been our plan that a large portion of the school would be replaced. You'll have a PUD easement, so the PUD can do some work around Penny Creek. And then we're going to, we actually have 3 recognitions. We have the school board recognition for the School Board Recognition Month, and we're going to be recognizing our regional middle school principal of the year, Mary O'Brien. We're very, very proud of and pleased at her selection. And then we're going to be recognizing Lance Bala for his recognition by the publisher that published the book of which he is a co-author as an outstanding publication within that particular publisher's stable of publications. So you'll get a chance to enjoy yourselves a great deal with recognitions, just like you did tonight, but there'll be more. And that's the upcoming meetings for January.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn. We're now at section 15.0, board superintendent comments and meeting evaluation. Who would like to get us started? Staring at you.
Well, it's great to be back, although after 2 weeks of break, I am still pretty tired. Well, right now, everyone at school is getting ready for finals, which is in 2 weeks. And it's very stressful, especially with my 5 AP classes right now. I'm trying to study as much as I can for all the tests. But this weekend, I was helping out with the wrestling tournament at our school, and I was there for over 8 hours, and by the 4th hour, my hand was cramping. It was just so much writing, and I have to say, it was very interesting because of all the sports, wrestling is one we don't hear much about, and it was just interesting to see how it's very different from all the other sports. And some of the students would wrestle at 1 p.m. and then wrestle all the way until 5, so it's like a 4-hour break between, but they still had to be there. But I don't know, I feel like we should recognize and acknowledge wrestling a lot more than we do now, because it's an amazing sport, and being there really made me see it. And also, today we had an MLK assembly at Everett High, and I have to say it's probably one of the best assemblies we've had so far. There's a lot of student voice this year, and it was just people's different point of views about what's happening and how we can sort of change the world in our own way, and it was very inspiring.
You have girl and boy wrestling at Everett High?
Yes, we do.
And so you're there do they compete at the same time or different days?
No, they did. They compete at the same time for that tournament. Yes, it was over 30 schools. So we had to write down the brackets, and we were in charge of the scoring of all the students. So we were there I was there for 8 hours, and some of us were there for over 12 hours. So it was just a very long day.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I had the pleasure of going to the the Rotary Club of Everett's 100-year luncheon today, and I wanted to go because I sit on the Mill Creek Rotary now, but because of all that club does for our students through support for AVID, support for everything, all of the scholarships they give It's just phenomenal. So it was a wonderful day with the Rotary International president. Was that his, who's from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and had the most beautiful Southern accent, so kind in his tone of voice. But it was just a lovely luncheon. And then prior to that, I just want to recognize the Mill Creek Rotary. One of the members at a prior Rotary had worked with the JCPenney's at Alderwood to give low-income kids really discounted clothes at Christmas time. So we identified Woodside, and Dr. Cobb found 30 kids, and then there were 30 Rotary members or their spouses who took a little kid around shopping with $100 per child, and coupons from JCPenney's and everything being on sale. The Edmonds Rotary was there at the same time we were. They had been there, they were leaving, we were coming, but just the generosity of JCPenney's for that, and just what a great time that I had a young man from Somalia Ghana, and English was perfect, even though he'd learned all of his English at Woodside. A child of 8 siblings, and his little brother was there too, and he wanted all of his clothes red. So he got red Nikes and a red coat and a red shirt, and my husband and I, we paid just a little bit extra when our kids went over, because that's just what we had to do, because they were just delightful, delightful children. But that was just the great, great things that the community does for all of our kids. Thank you.
Ruvik.
Sure. So this past weekend, Jackson had its Technology Student Association, or TSA, regional competition. And so my event was debate, and it just so happened that the topic this year was technology and education. And so it was fun because I could talk about the one-to-one technology plan, integrated technology plan, and all that fun stuff that we've been doing here at the board. And so it was really cool to see the other students' perspectives on the same topics.
And are we headed in the right direction? In your opinion?
Yeah, I think they assigned the sides you have to take. So I was actually arguing against technology, and so it was interesting for me because I had to do research for that, and I actually saw some pretty interesting things. But overall, I think all the students mostly agree with bringing technology into the schools.
What was your primary, I guess you would say, reason for no technology in your discourse with them?
Mostly was that in many studies, students have been shown to learn better, I guess you could say, with pencil and paper. There's some studies about note-taking and how you remember it better with when you're using a pen. And also, something I found interesting was that when you're reading, turning the pages actually, it adds context to what you're reading, and so you're somehow more able to remember that information later on. And so there's quite a few things that are pretty significant.
Yeah, with no technology. So things that we learned a long time ago.
Yeah.
We did okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay.
Director Andrews.
I had the pleasure of attending a second breakfast meeting at Heatherwood Middle School about a month ago. However, I forgot my notes, and I don't want to miss any of the important points they made, so I will defer my report on that until next meeting. Other than that, I'm really kind of hesitantly excited about the legislative session. There's been so much coverage in the newspaper and all. It's just really been interesting to read that, and I'm looking forward to tracking it. And I think we have so many wonderful resources to be able to look at that I think it's just going to be an interesting next 105 plus days.
Well, I have several things to say that I really enjoyed doing this over this winter break or December. And first thing is I happened to go to 2 events in which Jackson High School Jazz Ensemble was outstanding and wonderful at. I happened to attend the Mill Creek Women's Club luncheon in December on the 14th, and lo and behold, who was there was Jackson High School Jazz Ensemble doing the presentation of Christmas and holiday music at that meeting. So I was able to sit through that and really have a good time. And they even engaged the audience with singing songs. And the band played it, lots of solo. So it was, really impressive. And that same evening, Jackson High School did their Christmas concert, and I attended that. I must say the arts and music is alive in Everett Public Schools. And I'm so grateful that we're brought on the orchestra. We're building that up at the different middle schools, elementary strings, and then in the middle schools, the orchestras are coming into play. And then in the high school, we shall see a full-fledged orchestra. We already have one there at Jackson. But it is building, and it's a wonderful thing. It is truly wonderful. And thank you for doing that. And I also had the opportunity to attend a breakfast meeting at Monroe Elementary. And I would like to provide some of the comments that some of the parents who have been, not just while their kids are in elementary school, good volunteer supporters. I mean, we have one or two dads that are there, and their kids have already graduated from high school, and they're still a volunteer, and they're still providing their support around the elementary school and the teachers there. Things are positive. They're always there to help. Every teacher is always there to help, and they know how to handle challenging kids. Interesting. The kids feel comfortable, and they feel safe. The principal is constantly visible around the school, and he's very approachable. And everyone is kind. These are some of the words that they talked about. When their community, and you sense that community spirit that, this is my school, this is our school there. So that makes it very, very nice. One thing that they did talk about, and I think Gerard is really going to be working into this, is the transitioning experience. Usually the kids get out on the street and they walk down to Eisenhower and they go through the transitioning problem or experience, challenge, I guess you would say. But a lot of the parents mention that some of their kids are finding it very tough and very stressful. And it's just one day or 2 days when they go down there to learn how to open their locker and transition from class to class. Some kids are not coping with that very well. So they're going to be focused in on what do they need to do to make it less stressful. They understand it's a challenge.
Sixth graders, you're referring to sixth graders?
Fifth graders to sixth graders, They're finding They're finding it very stressful.
Okay.
And so that transition of moving from class to class is hard for some kids, and finding their locker, and on the first day if it doesn't open right away, and then they're late for class, and then, some kids, in fact, we had one kid who was late for class and just didn't function that one first class and could not function for the rest of the day from one parent. And so they're going to work more on that. And they were saying that they're going to see what they can do to make it less stressful. One parent did mention that they didn't particularly care for the highly capable program, and they would like to keep their kids at their community school instead of having their children leave their community school. But they also mentioned that for those kids that do leave their community schools, they find that kids are disconnected with their community. And this was one parent who happened to have Boy Scout troops, and the kids were also in the Boy Scout troop and going to a highly capable program, but they were in some respects disconnected. That connection with kids around their community just wasn't there, and they were struggling through that. So I think there's, I guess, more things to work with the schools, and Gerard's going to be looking into that and how to. He just felt that, you know, kids grow and kids need to do different things, and he'd share that information with highly capable programs. They do love the after-school robotics program. They want more sports, and they definitely love the music program. They don't have the strings programs there. They have steel drums, which is wonderful. They have the wonderful steel drum program. But there are a couple of parents who would like the strings program there too, so, which is a great thing too, but, you know, I'm just saying music is still there, and music is one of the things that steel drum band is just wonderful. And I don't think there's anything like it in any other elementary school district around the area that I know of. So I think we do a great job there with the steel drums there at Monroe. I have a lot. Strength. The strengths they mentioned, the after-school program, the robotics, the Young Authors Program, and the Safety Patrol. Parents mentioned they felt that was the strengths there at Monroe. They have wonderful teachers. Kids are trying very hard, and they felt that the science program, the choir, and the steel drum percussion group was another strength. In math and reading, teachers are really working to make sure the kids know it, and they were very grateful with that. They did mention something about substitute PE teachers, and I wasn't quite sure what they were talking about with substitute PE teachers, but they said that sometimes they're disconnected with the school in a sense, or their community, and they, I'm not quite sure about that, but they said that, and I think Gerard knew exactly what they were talking about, so I think he's going to be working on that one. But they also mentioned Chromebooks. They said that if parents want to get Chromebooks, how can we get more Chromebooks for those kids so they could use at home? So I can tell you technology is very much on the forefront, but they wanted to know what can they do to get them. That's about it. Most of them was a repetition of they felt the teachers and the community within Monroe are there to help the kids, and that was a definite strength. They felt that they really didn't want any of our teachers to go, which is a good thing to hear that. We don't want our teachers to leave. Good thing. That's all I have.
Director Mason.
Okay, I'll be quick. It's 2017. We're back for a new year, and I'm excited, looking forward to, again, the legislative session, and lots to do this year, but I hope everyone took an opportunity to be with family and rest. This is a district where people work very, very hard day in and day out, and so I hope people take that opportunity when it comes. Got my flu shot yesterday. Just letting you all know, you can go to Bartell's right over here, walk in. You don't need an appointment. A lot of times it's covered by insurance. So if you haven't done that, I encourage you to do that because it's a nasty one this year. And I think we're going to start seeing more of it run through our schools. So avoid it if you can. Got to do a couple fun things this past week. Attended the legislative session, and that was interesting just in that there's so much alignment in what we're all trying to do here in Snohomish County. Some have slightly more emphasis on transportation, some other things, but really in the end, we're kind of all on the same page, which is kind of fun to get everyone in a room together like that and realize that we are all trying to move this Snohomish County ship forward, whether you're in education, transportation, business. And then immediately ran over and got to put frozen strawberries on the waffles over at Sequoia. Yes. And I don't know if you folks know how that whole breakfast started, but it's the Rettenmeyer family, and they do it to honor her father, I believe, who passed. And the whole family shows up, including the grandkids, to help out, and they are the ones that put it on. And I just think, I don't know if you saw Reed Shockey's letter to the editor, but I just think that's a really great way to honor someone's past, is to step out and do something meaningful in your community. And, oh, there was something else, but I didn't write it down, darn. Well, anyhow, that's it. Looking forward to 2017.
Dr. Cohn.
Just wanted to double check that we'd all had a chance to give us that calendar adjustment input, and we want to make sure that everybody lays their hands on that and gives us the feedback so that we can make these calendar adjustments, get them on your calendars.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Looking forward to my first saucer at Emerson coming up this Thursday morning. So thank you. I'm excited to get my notebook and start looking at the data. And then I actually really appreciated this, and I wish Dr. Matthews was here. I was looking at the First Friday report, the assessment and web page update. And if you haven't had a chance to go on to some of the links and some of the interactive data that was on our website, it's really, really good stuff, and it really makes an effort to provide a higher level of transparency to some of our student outcomes. So I thought it was pretty neat, pretty cool. So, all right. We are now at section 16.0, executive closed session. We do not have an executive session scheduled for this evening, which brings us to section 17.0, adjournment. This concludes the business scheduled to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors on January 10th, 2017. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.